te pune, te whete, kore te pō. Ki ngā tangata Māori nā rangi raua ko papa. Ko tēnei te timatanga o te ao. Ko tēnei te timatanga o te ao. Te pute more te wu te aka te rea. Te wānui te kune te whete kore te pō. Ki ngā tangata Māori ngā rangi raua ko papa. Ko tēnei te timatanga o te ao. Ko tēnei te timatanga o te ao.
Down here, this was initially the ventilation system. They would light a fire in the bottom of the chimney, and the hot air would drag the air up as a mine. And then it became, when they switched to a steam fan, then that just became the chimney for the boiler fire. That was the mine entrance over there. It's bricked up, of course. It's the remains of a steam-driven fan that used to ventilate the mine. It's, you can still see some of the wheels. And up here was the explosive store. So you see the remains of the wheel of the fan. And that's about all that's left of it all, really. There's some other chimneys sort of over the hill because, the extensive tunnels, incredible.
Through my father, I'm a fifth generation West Coaster, and my mother's family moved to the coast to establish a chapel or a branch for their denomination of Christianity. I met Paul through a choir that I'm in, and through talking to people I knew on the coast, I learnt about theatre production that he had, and I approached him a few times about joining it. It took him a year or two to get back to me, but here I am. So yeah.
They are situations that are actually happening now. And that sort of makes it easier to play because it's actually happening now. The bit I like about the group is that I like getting into character and bringing it into the present. Even though we might be talking about wartime.
It's been the best journey of my life. I came to the West Coast purely because I saw it as the last bastion of freedom, the last place where you could become anonymous enough to do pretty much whatever you wanted so long as you weren't being a gross individual, so you were just living your life, maybe doing a few jobs here and there that weren't declared, that sort of thing. You could build a shack somewhere, where the council couldn't see it, that sort of thing. That was really what drew me here. And then when I got here, I found that wasn't true. You're always under the scrutiny of the authorities. But the people that you meet That was the difference.
So we want to tell the story of the working class gaining a political voice, which we see as between 1890 and 1935. Obviously an ongoing process, but that was a crucial period in New Zealand's history for that happening. Right, the 5 points, you've got the workers, you've got the peasants, you've got the students, you've got the intellectuals, and we reckon the 5th one is actually the national groupings, you know, which is in the old USSR very important, you know. And then a local Maori carver, Tony Manuels, did that piece, which is becoming a bit weather-worn, but it's about the workers coming from the four winds, Ngāhau Whā, because the workers came to Blackpool from all sorts of different directions.
I came over as a refugee from the city, idealistic, naive, hippie, thinking I was going to live, grow organic veggies and live on sandflies and whatever, and came over to a bush block on the coast, and there was a community around. When we turned up every second weekend to start building a house, people would just turn up with their nail, with a hammer and some gear, and they would help, and I just loved that community. And in Christchurch we did playback theatre. We started a playback theatre group over here, and that sort of fell apart after a while, but then Paul sort of told me I was going to come and do something with him. So that's about how we are, really.
So I mean, I think we started off with theatrical and cultural concepts which were both urban and international, really. I mean, there's Grotowski, there's Boal, there's Brecht, there's that whole cultural tradition from the 60s of the counterculture which community theatre comes out of, and so on. And so that meant that we were automatically in the role of activists in this place. I think there's quite a strong sort of sentimental nostalgia for heritage, I think, and there's some hidden away environmentalists. They tend to sort of be hidden away in their lifestyle blocks. It was the 1080 play, which was our first play, which was about sort of balancing fundamentalisms. We came out with the decision that each community should decide for itself, debate the issue and decide for itself. That was what we felt we could validly say about that issue. So for the first time we sort of put forward a communalist type vision, if you like. So it's not state, it's not market, it's the community deciding what to do about these things.
When I thought about how the world is working, you know, to be more able to have like the freedoms that Mike was talking about outweighed the, you know, the lifestyle and the money, and and it becomes more of a social position where community actually exists. I work in the community and support work, so that's definitely, I've seen the impacts here as well. I've seen the work that Mike does in the community that also affects the people that I support as well in the long run. So, you know, you can do that here. It's still quite connected.
There was a Industrial Workers of the World movement which started in the States, in Chicago. It was quite a militant philosophy, which is the workers and the bosses have nothing in common, and the workers need to organise themselves into one big union and take over from the boss, take over the means of production and get rid of wage slavery and establish utopia, basically. It was also a movement that about sort of industrial workers, migrant workers, non-skilled workers. Before that, the union movement had largely been about skilled workers, which is why you call them trade unions, you know, they're about the trades. So this movement was about incorporating all those unskilled workers, if you like. And it was very radical, and the strike was going to, you know, overthrow capitalism.
For me, I mean, I've learnt a huge amount about the place I live, the place I've chosen to call home, the history and the stories that I knew nothing about, and I wouldn't have known anything about had I not been involved, or with the theatre here.
Knew that community theatre was something that really attracted me in terms of the essence and the sort of manner of the work. And I came here and all that was available, like I said before, was Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat. So it sort of didn't have the soul that I was looking for. And then soon after Paul found me, I think, I put an ad in the paper, and I was really attracted, and 1080 being the first piece, it was really powerful in lots of ways, at a personal level but also at a community level. And I mean, at a personal level, it really sort of reminded me, I guess, or fired me up again around the way that theatre could, like, you take people's stories and you tell them back to them, and all of a sudden you have a really powerful kind of medium in terms of, people seeing themselves on stage. And as Paul said, people around here over the years, we've kind of trained our audiences. They know what to expect now. Initially, they were a little apprehensive. They were expecting to be challenged in ways they weren't comfortable with, and we challenged them definitely.
Yeah, there's a lot of expectation, I think, now from ourselves, on ourselves sometimes, to be the best at everything, to be excelling, to be the top of your game. But see, on the West Coast, if you try and be like that, it's a lonely place. Because it only works in a team environment, you can only get certain places by knowing people. I know that for what I do, and Mike knows that for what he does.
Well, it's like, the shops. If one shop in Greymouth gains an advantage over another, all it's going to do is shut the other one down.
Yeah, so where does growth come from as far as that goes? Yeah.
There was the crib time issue, which is lunchtime, and it was 15 minutes, and it's, that's not, in a coal mine, that's not long enough to have your lunch and have a pee and so on. It's impossible. So they, as activists, they sort of engineered a strike, really, which was well supported by other workers, and lasted, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. And they won all that they wanted. The lunchtime and an 8-hour day, and all the workers had been sacked, got reinstated. So it was a considerable success, as an industrial moment. And that led to the formation of a national miners' union, which then led to the formation of a Federation of Labour in New Zealand for the first time. Heavily influenced by the whole wobbly philosophy or ideology. And it was a very stroppy period in terms of New Zealand worker history. It was the closest we got to a revolutionary situation. I mean, you got Waihi, and then you got the waterfront strike in Wellington, and the farmers coming in to support the state and the police with their batons, and they were running street battles, and there was, a bit of gunfire. There was a worker death at Waihi. So it was a stroppy time, and then the employers and the state turned on them, they got very heavy, and then the First World War came along, and everyone sort of got a bit patriotic. Apart from these people who were conscientious objectors and ended up in jail. And so then the working class turned to the Labour Party, to the political, the political solution, if you like, to gaining some influence in how society's run.
Like I said, I did playback theatre, and part of playback theatre is people can tell their stories without really being judged, and it can be seen on stage, and they can be seen and heard without kind of an argy-bargy, really, And that's what I think Paul does with some of his plays. He shows things without having it to be judged or anything. And I love that. I've learned a lot. I learned a lot about the history of the coast and about this timberland stuff. We did Helen and the Ferals,
But it's taught me an awful lot about history here. The history of this area and the people that came here whenever they came, and the way they lived and the way things were done. And so that part of it is great, because if I just come as a as a newcomer, then I wouldn't have known most of the stuff that I know, because you really get down to it and bring it out as it was. What it does, I think, in being in these plays, is that it gives us all a kind of identity. So people see us in walking around, and for me, people didn't know me when I came, but people know me now and associate me with, doing this or doing that or saying this or saying that. So it gives me a feeling of identity with the area and with the community.
Yeah, I think I really started getting pissed off right back when the French, when they bombed the Rainbow Warrior, and I was how old were we? We were fairly young. It was probably another 5 years before I got old enough to vote. And I remember talking to Dad and saying, how can this happen? Why couldn't we just turn around to France and say, actually, fuck you, get out, get all your people out, get out, fuck yous. And Dad's like, oh no, he couldn't. This poor old Dave Long, he couldn't. Oh, why? Oh, because they'd cut us off from all the trade and stuff. I was like, fuck them. No, but then all the farmers will go broke, and then, oh yeah, because whoever they owed money to, which would have been some sort of global banking system, the whole thing would have collapsed. Shit. I was like, oh, well, that almost makes us powerless. You can't even dig into your own sovereignty and say, no, that's it, fuck yes, we're not dealing with you.
And we've had also close connection with the Cubans, with the Cuban embassy. And the Cuban ambassador comes down for every May Day. They always have. The Cuban ambassador opened the museum. They had an amazing sort of thing in the billboard for the local papers said communists heading for Blackpool.
Some of the stories that we've told, they work because we're telling them here, and that to tell the story somewhere else, it wouldn't have the same impact that it has telling the stories here.
If you dare mention anything that's even you're like a conservationist or whatever, you're a greenie, and then you get written off as a heretic, or so being able to do these plays and speak the truth, as we mentioned, it almost in a way it safeguards you, because the group is speaking, but you also have a chance to be honest and say that truth, so there's I guess that's the side of it as well. So although your cheeky comment about the cult, I feel it's as much about me speaking to the people as it is Paul. Like, he's the vessel in a way, or he creates the some of the material, the script. Yeah. And the 1080 and a couple of them, like the real sort of community theatre based, sort of going out, talking to the people, getting the stories, coming back, playing around with a theatrical moment. That's the really powerful stuff, because then it is beyond us. I mean, Paul has the awesome skill of putting the words together, but it's the community that has given us the material, and that's really powerful. Eh?
So this is just a story of the 08 strike being told in these panels, and so we go drum 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 drum. A Labour historian wrote the text for this. You can see the sort of living conditions are pretty bad for the single blokes and for everyone really. And there was a classic moment in the court case, because the miners' union got fined you had to go to court because to go on strike was illegal. And the classic story is of during the court case, the judge called for an hour and a half lunch. So they were wanting half an hour, and he needed an hour and a half. So we just tell the story of that, and then a bit of a roll of honour of those who struck. And this is an amazing photo, really, of the pride of these unionists. They're dressed up in their Sunday best.
A lot of people that I know got a lot of benefit from the lockdown simply because we had to start looking at our own bubbles. We identified that really quickly. We also identified that Black Bull is its bubble. You know, even though everybody here still was doing what we were told to do, there was a lot of contact and a lot of yelling over fences and things like that. But to be in a city during that, how frightening, how alone, and the assumption that everybody could hear what they were saying. It was just also something that we could see too. We had all the technology, didn't we? You know, even in backwards West Coast, way back, you know, where no one knows anything, at least we knew what was going on. But I still believe that there were a lot of people who were still wondering what, they're probably still hiding under their beds or something, you know, and we'll just see how that works out in the future.
But I think things started to change when we were in lockdown. It was people were having to adapt to a new way of living, and there was an opportunity to actually start to think about, you know, people did start to think about, you know, what was important for them, and what is it that they wanted from their lives. But then as soon as we came out of, you know, certainly level 3, it was like, and even when we came out of level 4, it was like, how quickly can we get back to how we were? And all those lessons that we were starting to learn, we were starting to learn, they just went like that.
I mean, the perfect moment to bring a universal basic income, wasn't it? Absolutely perfect moment for them to do that, and the political will wasn't there. You know, I mean, they were almost doing it. They could have just done it and said, "Look, let's try it for a year." Because for me, you have that, then you give people, you know, you're really restructuring the economic system, and the sort of choices people can make then, you know. But yeah, no. The wheel here. I'll quickly talk. This is. When Pike happened, you know, we were going to have a workers' memorial of some sort. You know, that's about workers, you know, Workers' Memorial Day, workers killed at work. And then Pike happened, and I found this buried in the bush, you know, of the road from our place, and we dragged it out. And we then had a pottery workshop with the families, and once again with the local potters at Moana, and they came and we did it over in the Workmen's Club, and each family made a plaque. It was a very moving day because that was mass grief, you know. It was only about 3 months after it, and so we erected the wheel and glued those plaques there, and each anniversary we have a ceremony here, a little ritual, which is always great.
The really interesting thing about Black Bull, there's people from all walks of life and all political beliefs.
It's crazy.
And then occasionally there's a working bee for something, and everybody just does it. And we even harangue each other gently, you know. Oh, what are you doing here? Oh, well, fuck, everyone else is here, so we've got to help.
Yeah. Or I heard there'll be scones
Yeah.
or something, you know.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of more village scale, and as I say, the sort of the notion of the commune, you know, this, I mean, what was happening in Rojava is really interesting, obviously. And you know, people were pretty keen on what was going on there. You know, an amazing story, but that whole notion of social ecology, of Bookchins, which is interesting, that you know, we have to have a human society that is ecological, not just separate from nature, but the same principles that apply to natural ecology, you have to apply it to human society.
I've worked with Gloria Vale for probably about 14 years as a midwife there. It's a very special place. It's not a place I would, as a woman, want to live there. And I know that there's people have left, many people have left in over the past 10 years that I know of. And there's some really, really strong anti-Gloria Vale feeling from the ones that have left. So, I mean, I don't want to go into that at all. What I will say is that it's an extraordinary community, and they have their collectivism is amazing. You know, they have their school, they have their society, they have really, really strong relationships between, I'm only talking about the women here, the women have incredibly strong, wonderful female relationships in their work, in their day-to-day living, and incredibly supportive.
We spoke to a few of the women that live there, and they showed us around, and they took us here and they took us there, and they were very happy. They were living a life of, I don't know, women, a society in the 1930s or something. But they were happy. They had babies, they had families, they had husbands, they did what they were told, they did... They had a society that was like it was of old. And they were very happy with that.
That whole ideology I don't believe in, but it's always challenged my head about, so what is happiness? So these people are happy, they're connected in their group, they've got work to do. Do we need the endless news cycle of bad stuff that goes on in the world, the fires and the murders and the wars and the bombs and all that? Maybe they've got something, really, they have something that we're missing.
Vision of where the coast could be 60 Gloria Vale-sized communities dotted along, because that would be the 30,000 people that live here. They could all be different sorts of, based on different ideologies, you know, but all operate collectively in terms of economically. It'd be a really interesting place, wouldn't it? A very amazing region. But that's sort of, yeah. Showers, a couple of showers in each of those cubicles, and when there's a roof there would have been things where they could hang their clothes up to dry or get warmed, you know, their day clothes while they're working, and then they'd come back and swap the whole thing so their work clothes could go up there. So yeah, it was the... And this, I'm not sure, another shower. I mean, I'm not quite sure why the wall's there, really. But anyway. So yeah, pretty important place. And this is where, you know, they'd often have political discussions, union discussions after work. A lot of tomfoolery as well, you know. Yeah. And Jeffrey's poem goes, the bathhouse was a cathedral of nudes. Here the grateful shoulders lathered, work forgotten and prayers of steam smoking off the soapy skin, rivers of coal dust down the plug holes. Like the Japanese, these working men bathed together as the gods of old. One could even smoke a racehorse, roll me own while showering. The taste of life's tobacco. Standing beneath the jets of water, one more shift and not dead yet. My dad took me in there once. He hauled his civvy clothes up high to warm in the steam, while he worked down under. After the shift I saw him naked, white as a lamb, as a ghost. I think suddenly we are, time of crisis has arrived. I mean, we're in it. And, you know, the whole notion of climate crisis, which was, you know, 20 years, 30 years, and it's suddenly arrived, I think, and with the COVID thing, you know, and the fires and so on, we're suddenly in the midst of it, really, and it's not going to get better, is it? It's going to keep on happening, and how we respond is anyone's guess.
Te ku te more te wu te aka te rea. Te wanui te kune te whe te kore te pō. Ki ngā tangata Māori ngā rangi raua ko papa. Ko tēnei te timatanga o te ao. Ko tēnei te timatanga o te ao.